Revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, barely audible, yet it shakes empires to their core. That's exactly how Caitlin Clark delivered hers. No firestorms on social media, no televised rants, no bitter interviews. Just one word. One word that carried more weight than any championship, any highlight reel, any record. No. No to the UConn Empire. No to the $1 million contract meant to lure her into validating a system that once ignored her. The calm in that rejection was terrifying because it left nothing to argue with. It was final. And for women's basketball, it was revolutionary. At first, it seemed absurd. Analysts and bettors placed her third or fourth in WNBA MVP odds as if her talent wasn't enough to command respect. That was the slap in the face, not just to Caitlin, but to every WNBA player who ever fought to be recognized. Fans with no perspective dismissed her potential with ridiculous claims, yet they didn't see what she already knew. Their ignorance was her fuel. Every dismissive comment, every undervaluation became part of the fire she carried. Then came the offer. 8 weeks of basketball, $1 million. An opportunity most would have taken without thinking. Comfort, money, history, all on a silver platter. But Caitlin saw the truth. It wasn't just a basketball contract. It was a lifeline thrown to a man who had turned his back on her years ago. Desperation disguised as opportunity. And most people didn't see it. They thought she was crazy. But she wasn't. She was strategic. And when she said no, she wasn't rejecting a paycheck. She was rejecting control. To understand the stakes, you have to know Geno Auriemma. For 3 decades, he wasn't just a coach. He was an institution. At Connecticut, he sculpted a dynasty, 11 national championships, seasons so dominant opponents barely registered. UConn wasn't just a destination. It was the crown jewel of women's basketball. Maya Moore, Diana Taurasi, Breanna Stewart, the greatest names in the sport passed through his program. If Geno called you, it meant you had arrived. He shaped victories, reshaped the sport, and dictated who mattered. And for years, everyone accepted that hierarchy as truth. Growing up in Iowa, Caitlin Clark dreamed of UConn. It was basketball heaven, the place where legends were made. Everyone assumed that when recruitment time came, UConn would be her inevitable path. But Geno never called. No visit. No phone call. Silence. When the reasoning finally came, it was crushing. He already had Paige Buchers, the top recruit. Clark could have been second fiddle. Worse, he suggested she should have picked up the phone herself. The self-proclaimed king of talent evaluation couldn't bother to recognize the force that would soon change women's basketball forever. Instead of accountability, he offered blame. Instead of humility, arrogance. And that stuck with her. To outsiders, choosing Iowa looked like settling. Compared to UConn's 11 banners, Iowa seemed small, almost irrelevant. But for Clark, it was liberation. She wasn't Paige's understudy. She wasn't Geno's afterthought. She was the cornerstone, the centerpiece. And she didn't just play the game, she transformed it. Deep threes became statements. Passes became artistry. Every arena she entered wasn't just a game. It was a cultural movement. Madison Square Garden sold out. Television ratings soared. Young fans lined up for hours. Caitlin Clark wasn't just breaking records. She was creating entirely new categories. Geno's silence had unknowingly fueled her fire, and she burned brighter than anyone could predict. And then came Geno's jab. Instead of acknowledging her dominance, he mocked her as a kid pretending in a driveway. He derided her fans as naive, accused them of misunderstanding the sport, suggested they were harming women's basketball. Ironically, these very fans were the lifeblood of the league. Parents driving their kids to arenas, young girls hoping for a selfie, casual viewers tuning in for the first time. They were the ones carrying the sport into the mainstream. Clark didn't respond publicly. She let her game speak, and what happened next would shock everyone. Rookie of the Year, first team WNBA honors, fourth in MVP voting. The very predictions Geno mocked came true. She didn't just validate herself. She validated everyone who believed in her. Fans, parents, kids, they were right. And that validation wasn't just a win for Clark. It was a dagger to Geno's authority. He had laughed at the possibility of her succeeding without his approval. But there it was, undeniable, in full view. Then came the desperate offer. A brand new women's league, unrivaled 3-on-3 designed to disrupt the system. It had credibility, ambition, funding, but it lacked a gravitational star. There was only one athlete who could make millions of people care, Caitlin Clark. Geno, the same man who never called, who dismissed her rise, mocked her supporters, came back with $1 million offer. But Clark wasn't fooled. This wasn't about opportunity. It was about control. And when she said no, it wasn't just rejection, it was transformation. The offer, the league, the $1 million contract, none of it mattered without her. Geno's desperation was exposed. His aura of invincibility shattered. Think about the symbolism. For decades, Geno Auriemma controlled who mattered. If you wanted to be recognized in women's basketball, you had to pass through him. The gatekeeper, the authority, the final word. But Caitlin Clark never needed his stamp. She built her empire from scratch. By saying no, she didn't just reject a contract. She rejected a system, a worldview, a power structure. The dynasty that seemed untouchable was quietly dismantled. And she did it without malice, just by being herself, playing her game, trusting her fans, and betting on her talent. One word, one whisper, and the balance of power shifted forever. Revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, and in that whisper, dynasties crumble. Caitlin Clark didn't just beat Geno Auriemma. She redefined what greatness in women's basketball looks like. The future isn't in the hands of gatekeepers. It belongs to players bold enough to chart their own path. She didn't just reject a paycheck, she rejected control. She showed the world that power doesn't reside in programs, coaches, or dynasties. It resides in those daring enough to rise on their own terms. One word, one whisper. One dynasty changed forever. Caitlin Clark didn't just change Iowa basketball. She shook the entire culture around women's basketball. New fans weren't just watching a game, they were witnessing history. Social media lit up with clips of her deep threes and jaw-dropping passes. Suddenly, kids in gyms across the country were copying her every move. She became a symbol of possibility, proof that talent, determination, and courage could disrupt the old hierarchies. And the irony? The very people who mocked her for being too loud were now following her every highlight, hungry for more. Geno Auriemma wasn't the only one shocked. Investors, league officials, and media outlets scrambled. The system that had thrived on predictability suddenly faced chaos. Caitlin's rise exposed vulnerabilities no one wanted to admit existed. For decades, women's basketball had relied on dynasties, gatekeepers, and familiar stars. Now, one player had rewritten the script, and everyone knew it. The new era didn't need permission, it needed impact. Caitlin Clark gave it. Her refusal wasn't just about rejecting a contract, it was a statement about legacy. For years, Geno's legacy dictated the narrative, who mattered, who was talented, and who deserved attention. But Clark showed that legacy isn't given by titles or championships alone. It's built by influence, by inspiring a generation, by turning skeptics into believers. With every court she dominated, she chipped away at the illusion that greatness had a single gatekeeper. Authority doesn't create icons. Icons create history. And now the future is hers. The balance of power has shifted. Women's basketball will never be the same. Young players entering the sport don't ask if Geno approves. They ask if they can carve their own path like Clark did. Contracts, dynasties, and gatekeepers are no longer the measure of success. Influence, creativity, and courage are. One word, one decision. And Caitlin Clark didn't just reject control. She rewrote the rules. The whisper of her no echoes louder than any championship ever could, signaling a new era where players, not dynasties, hold the power. Caitlin Clark has become more than a basketball player. She's a symbol. Every decision she makes, every record she shatters sends a message. You don't need permission to define greatness. Her no wasn't just about a contract or a coach. It was about ownership. Ownership of her career, her narrative, and her impact on the sport. Young athletes now see her as proof that courage and vision can outweigh tradition and authority. She didn't just win games. She won autonomy, respect, and a place in history that no one can take away. Her story isn't just about basketball. It's about empowerment, and the world is watching. If you've been captivated by Caitlin Clark's story, don't miss what's coming next. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a video. We post new content every single day, diving deep into the biggest stories, controversies, and secrets in sports. Join our community of fans who want the full story, because here the truth isn't just told, it's revealed. Don't wait. Hit subscribe now and be part of the conversation. Caitlin Clark's rise didn't happen overnight, and it wasn't without sacrifice. Long nights in the gym, endless film sessions, and constant scrutiny shaped her into the player she is today. The pressure to perform, to prove herself against doubters, and to carry the hopes of a new generation weighed heavily. But she turned that pressure into fuel. Every shot, Every assist, every clutch moment wasn't just about stats. It was about proving that talent combined with relentless dedication can rewrite history. Her journey reminds us that behind every highlight reel is a story of persistence, resilience, and grit. Caitlin's influence goes far beyond Iowa or even the WNBA. She's inspiring the next generation of players to dream bigger, demand respect, and challenge outdated norms. Programs across the country are adjusting to the new standards she set. Coaches, analysts, and even veteran players are taking note. The game is evolving, and the future belongs to those who innovate and lead. One word: no. Started a ripple that will be felt for decades, changing the balance of power, the expectations, and the very way women's basketball is played and watched.